Hi everyone, I'm Lainey Martin with the Carmical Sports Media Institute here at the University of Georgia, and today I'm here with Jackson Collier. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Jackson.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. So I've looked up to your work for a long time, and all of your photography and graphic design is incredible. Definitely inspiring to me and like so many in the creative community. So I just want to start off with an easy question. Tell me what your position is within UGA football and what your job entails.
Yeah, absolutely. So the title of my position, it's funny, it changes, everywhere you're at. Different places call it different things, but I am the Assistant Director of Creative Design here at Georgia Football. And essentially what that means is any content that comes out of this building, whether that's social media, recruiting content, graphics, photo, video, I have a hand in that, whether that's in the creation, the ideation, all those things. So, the day-to-day is a little tedious and a little more specific, but, long story short, that's kind of what it entails.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So another question, just an easy one. Where did you graduate from, and then what was your major, minor, and any certificates?
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Georgia in December of 2022. I was a marketing major, so Terry guy, little plug there. And then I did a new media certificate in the Grady School of Journalism.
Awesome. And what did you want to be growing up?
That is a great question. So growing up, I was obsessed with sports stats, the very specific kind of this player, accomplished this feat and like the specifics of that. So I would say I wanted to be a sports statistician. I was obsessed with the ESPN shows where they would talk about sports all day long and kind of, somehow to combine those two things. That was kind of what I wanted to be growing up.
That's
hard
awesome.
to describe, and I don't even know if that's an actual position, but that's what I wanted to be. So
That's so great. Did you have like a bigger love for like SEC college football, like compared to the pros, or?
I've loved a lot of sports. Football is a top passion, but I'm a big golfer, so I loved golf, baseball, basketball. I played all of those. So
That's awesome.
yeah, there's not one that has my heart specifically, even though one pays my bills.
Well, kind of going off of that, like where did your love of sports come from, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's always been in my family. Specifically Georgia sports. My grandpa was a big Georgia fan. He raised my dad right in being a fan of the Bulldogs, and that was passed down to me. And then, my dad played baseball, golf, basketball, all of that growing up. So I think his athletic ability or whatever there is in that regard got passed down to me. He actually played golf in college. So that was obviously a big inspiration in my sports loving life. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where did he play?
He played at Troy University.
Oh, incredible.
So,
My cousin actually went there.
That's awesome. Yeah, in Alabama, back in the 80s. He's an old man, but
Yeah, that's so cool. When was the first time you really got into photography and graphic design?
yes, in high school, so I'll start with photography because obviously that's kind of the most front-facing thing with my job here. It's the part of my job that I promote the most. So because they are two different stories. So with photography, I was in high school, and Friday nights I didn't have a lot of fun in the student section, whether that was dressing up in a toga or painting myself neon yellow. I didn't like it. I wanted to be closer to the action. I wanted to be down on the field, and I found that the best way to do that, given my creative passion, was photography. And so there was a girl named Mina who really helped me get involved in that way. I had a camera that my dad had for a few years. It was a Canon Rebel, not a super great camera, but I grabbed it and went down on the field with her and just started shooting, and kind of never looked back. Honestly, we had a couple players who wanted me to take photos of them, and so you know how that goes. It's becomes sort of a transactional relationship, but it's something that I definitely attribute to why I'm here today. And then on the graphic side, it actually dates back even further to middle school. So me and my buddies who I played travel baseball with, we would, after games, we would need something to kill the time, whether we were waiting for another game to start or maybe we were out eating at dinner, whatever it was. And we had a lot of fun making we called them edits at the time, little edits on our phones, whether it was pictures of us, pictures of our favorite athletes. I definitely did some Georgia players, and they were not good. I mean, this is we're talking 13 years ago at this point.
Wow.
So things have come a long way, but that really did spark my passion for graphic design. And eventually I moved on from doing things on my phone with the click of a couple buttons and started to learn Photoshop. And
Awesome.
it's crazy to see how that has transpired into what it's become today.
That is so incredible.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
So did you, kind of going off of that, did you take any courses in school that helped prepare you for where you are today?
So in high school, I took a couple of graphic design courses, and I would definitely say that helped me learn a couple new skills, and especially when I was starting out, I needed to learn the basics of Photoshop, the basics of Illustrator. And I would say in college, I didn't take a lot of courses that really pertained to graphic design. You know, there's a couple of new media courses that dive into the maybe more of the what do you call it? You know, more of the aesthetics of things, so how to make things look good, but nothing that was like specifically in Photoshop. Now, I was the guy in group projects who would say, "You guys handle all of the information. I'm going to make the thing look pretty, and we'll get an A that way." And so I would say I attribute that, you know, to a lot of it. But no, not a lot of college courses. Now, marketing did help me. Marketing helped me with a client relation standpoint. So a thing about this job is that the way I think of it is every player and every coach is essentially a client of mine. And the fans are a client as well. You know, you're trying to inspire, persuade, inform, maybe even like advise them on things.
Right.
So how to handle those client relations, I think that's a big skill that my marketing courses taught me.
That's awesome. Can you tell me the story of how you started working with Georgia Football Creative in college?
Absolutely. When I was in high school, I was obviously learning those graphic design skills like I mentioned earlier, and I thought I was bigger than my britches, I think. I maybe thought I was a little better than I was at the time, but we didn't know any better. And so I reached out to Georgia Football because I was like, I want to go to Georgia for school. I know what I want to do. I'm going to be a graphic designer. As I started to learn, I kind of made that realization.
Right.
And so I reached out to the account on Instagram through a DM, through a message, and said, "Hey, I would love to work for you guys. You know, what does that look like?" And this was maybe sophomore year of college. So a little naive, maybe a little ambitious, but not a bad thing. They replied nicely saying, you know, "Hey, we usually have our students work with us. It's hard, you know, maybe working with somebody who's not already a student. Be patient, wait, get into school first. Finish up high school, and we'll talk then." Well, the next summer comes around, I'm a junior. I reach out again because I'm like, maybe things have changed, right? I'm getting closer to college. They tell me the same thing. Wait, and we'll figure it out. And then the next year I graduate. I'm coming to Georgia. It's almost a foregone conclusion at that point that I'm going to be working with the team. I've annoyed them enough already. They almost had to let me in. But I remember it actually wasn't the beginning of the semester because I started that 2019 football season not working as an intern. But some positions changed within the group, and I think it was in September, right after the Notre Dame game. They asked me to come in for an interview for a graphic design position, and honestly, the rest is history.
That's so awesome.
Yep.
That's incredible. I love how you were like building that relationship through high school.
Right, and it wasn't, you know, it's not like we knew each other super well, but they
Right.
knew that I was interested, and I think showing that interest early on, even though it might have been a little bit of pestering, I think that is probably a good testament to like being persistent and
For sure.
kind of showing your excitement and interest early on, even if it's too early. So.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Do you have any, or what photographers and graphic designers do you personally look up to?
Too many. You know, I think in this industry, you can never have enough, and I think it also spans outside of sports. It's not just sports photographers that I look to for inspiration. It's editorial designers or maybe people who are shooting fashion or portraits up in New York City or fashion weeks in France and Italy.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I look to a lot of people. Now, of course, there's a few that come off the top of my head as like huge inspirations to me. So there's a photographer who I worked under at Florida named Jordan Harold. He's actually about to start a new position, but he was instrumental in my ability to learn photography. I mean, he taught me so many things about storytelling, about composition, how to crop photos correctly, because that matters when you're trying to storytell. So he's really somebody who I would say influenced me the most as a photographer. And then another for just telling the story of a brand and portraying that to so many would be Frank Martin. He was a director here when I first started in 2019, and just the way that he told the story of Georgia football was so beautiful and so passionate. And as a fan at the time, I wasn't even working here when I first learned of his work. I was so just captivated, and it made me buy in even more as a fan. And then I think once I got here and started working with him, that definitely led into my work, and
Right.
or I should say bled into my work, because it was really apparent. And so those two, and then of course it would be remiss if I didn't mention Chandler Eldridge. He came in here in, I want to say 2020 as a graphic designer, so I would have been a student at the time, and he has taught me so much about specifically recruiting design and what it means to promote the school to a high school prospect. So, and he's who I currently work under now, so he's definitely
awesome.
instrumental in my story.
That's so interesting. I love that. Does anyone, this is kind of, I guess, like a random question, but does anyone else in your family have a creative job?
When I was looking at the list of questions earlier, or just, glancing at them, I saw that question and definitely chuckled, because no. I mean, my mom's a teacher, and so coming up with lesson plans and that kind of thing, I would consider that to be creative. My dad works kind of in IT in that space, and so I'm sure he has to be creative sometimes, but it's not a creative job.
Right.
My brother works in insurance, so
Okay.
definitely not there. But I can say that there is a creative passion that runs in my family. My grandpa is a huge historian, huge storyteller, and he was a photographer. I mean, not for his day job, but
Yeah.
he has taken photos of every moment in his life and
amazing.
and my dad's life, and it's really cool because he curates these albums. That he has a Georgia football album, then he's got his family album, his grandkids album, all these things, and I look through those and I just think his ability to convey emotion and convey a story definitely influenced me, even if I didn't know it at the
Right.
time. And he and I still bond over photos that he might have captured when he came to a Georgia game in the 1970s or 1980s. I have seen those, and it's even fun to kind of compare maybe how Sanford Stadium looks different
Yeah.
nowadays compared to then. So
For sure.
he no creative job, but definitely creative passions that maybe fed into me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then what is your favorite camera equipment to shoot with?
Favorite camera equipment. So I've had the ability to work with Canon and Sony products, and I can say great things about both of them. But I learned on Canon. I've shot my biggest moments on Canon, so I'm definitely loyal to them. I love, actually, my first camera love was the Canon 1DX. It's just a great camera. Obviously not mirrorless, but something about that click. When I hit that button, you just feel like the image is going to be good. I don't know how to describe it. So that would be the first camera I love, but I do love the mirrorless options that Canon has right now. R3 is great, R5. I have a personal R6 that I use, and it works really well.
Nice.
When I was at Florida, I had the ability to use Sony, and I would say those colors are really cool. If you're going for a cinematic look, I would use Sony, just because something about the blues and the oranges that it was able to create. But yeah, Canon is definitely where my heart lies.
So take me through a UGA football game day through your eyes. And
Ooh.
do you have a checklist of what you want to photograph?
Well, it's a long day. You know it.
Yeah.
I know it too well. Shooting a football game day is a long day, because people think that it's just 60 minutes between the hedges or between the lines, wherever you are.
Yeah.
It's not. It has to deal with 4 hours before the game when the guys are getting prepared, 2 hours before when they show up to the stadium, maybe it's dog walk, post game, capturing those emotions and maybe moments with their families, or
Yeah.
post game interviews, and then the editing process afterwards. So holistically, it takes up your entire day. It doesn't matter if the game's at noon or at 8 p.m. But specifically, kind of laying it out, what that looks like. I wouldn't say I necessarily have a checklist, unless we know that there's going to be some sort of recognition during the game, or something maybe out of the ordinary that's happening. Maybe it's President Trump being at the game, or Richard Seymour getting his gold jacket for the Hall of Fame,
Right.
things that come up. But I think it's best to just go in with knowing that every football game is different. obviously there's 4 quarters, there's the same players every time if you're in that season, but there's never going to be the same score, the same scenario, the same storyline. So going in with kind of an open mind and just saying, hey, I'm going to capture whatever comes to me and do it to the best of my ability, I think that's the best way to go about it. I think if you have a checklist, you can kind of be so worried about, oh, did I get that moment?
Right.
Is who I'm capturing it for going to be upset that if I did miss it? You just kind of get in your head about some things. Now, I will say shooting at the professional level, especially if there's a lot of like activations or brand partnerships and they're paying for stuff to be shown throughout the stadium, you will get a list of things to capture, and it's important to get as many as you can. But
For sure.
thankfully, I haven't been in the position where I've had to stay locked down to things, and I get to capture just Georgia football and the things that happen on the field, off the field, fan emotion, and really just things that convey that the entire day.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, great question.
I know you touched a little bit about like your editing process, because I know like I've noticed you like on the field after a touchdown, like uploading it to your phone or potentially like sending it to somebody for Georgia football. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we pride ourselves in getting our photos up to the booth and out onto social media as quick as possible. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. Obviously, having an Ethernet port where you're able to upload to maybe like an FTP or something like that is super quick. But we've found a lot of success in apps like Canon Connect, where we can connect to a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi at the stadium, run to a place that has good enough service, and then send those photos as quickly as possible to our social media coordinator for the day, who's up in the booth, making sure that gets out with the proper caption in a timely manner, so that fans who maybe aren't getting to follow the game on TV or obviously want to promote their favorite players have the opportunity to do so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is kind of a fun question, but what is the longest graphic design project that you've worked on personally?
Ooh. So I will say my favorite design projects to work on are the ones that take the longest, because it really means you get to build out a world. That's kind of how I think of my graphics, is like they're their own little world, and they have their own story and their own, maybe they're dealing with a different part of the branding, and National Signing Day is going to look different from the season-long campaign and those kinds of things. So I would say the longest is probably a National Signing Day campaign, because you're designing materials for, let's say, 25 to 40 prospects who are going to potentially sign with your school. And that's a very personalized ordeal to go through. And so finding a way to convey player personality in each graphic and make it look different and unique, because they show up in the feed as 40 different graphics, it gets stale over time. Obviously, fans are excited to welcome new players, but if the graphic or the video looks the same for the entire time, it's just going to grow old throughout the day. So finding ways to kind of mold them into their own player-specific project, I think that's kind of where my passion lies, and definitely some of the longer projects I've worked on. So
that's super interesting.
I can expand on that a little bit, but yeah, it's
like, it's definitely like, I guess like you really have to get into your like marketing mindset to
absolutely.
reach like the potential viewers and fans and everything.
Absolutely. Some of these kids are top of their class, and fans have been following them for years, even if they follow recruiting closely. But there's others who maybe have just burst onto the scene, or maybe fans aren't as aware. Maybe they're a fan who doesn't necessarily follow recruiting. We don't want the first time they see these players to be on the field in September for the first game.
Right.
Who is that with that name on the back of their jersey? We don't want that. We want them to be, we want them to have their moment to like be introduced to the fan base in a formal way. And so I think it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of personalization, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. That's super fascinating.
Right.
I know I've asked you this before, but can you tell me about your favorite game that you've ever shot?
Favorite game? Got me on the spot right here. I did not see that question in the list. But my favorite game would have to be the first national championship. 2021, I guess it would be January 2021.
Yeah.
Obviously in Indianapolis, playing Alabama, our rival, it seems like for the last 5 to 10 years, hadn't really been able to take them down. And we lost to them in the SEC championship that year, so making it into the playoff was a blessing in the first place. Beating Michigan in Miami, and then getting the chance to play Alabama again for redemption to end the 41-year drought. Obviously, they ruined our hopes in overtime in 2017, 2018, whenever that was, and the game just carried so much weight. You could feel it in the air, honestly, all week long.
Wow.
And, the path of the game didn't really favor us at some points. I personally thought the game was over. I
Wow.
probably shouldn't have thought that because we all know what happened next.
Yeah.
Keely Ringo picks the ball off, takes it 60, 70 yards for the score, and we end up winning. And my parents were at that game, and I've never seen my dad cry, but he sent me a picture that night of him crying, and I just thought that was the
Oh,
coolest thing.
that's so sweet.
So to be able to capture that and obviously have that moment with my friends, my family, my team, that was super, super special. I don't know if one will ever top that. The
Yeah.
second one was special as well, the second national championship, but something about that first one just makes it sweeter. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. I
Yeah.
can just like imagine like it's just such a special moment.
Well, it's
that
one of
you'll
those
keep.
things you're not supposed to celebrate. As a
Yeah.
journalist, you're not supposed to celebrate
Right.
on the field when you're covering a team or
But it's
covering a
hard not
game.
to.
But it's hard not to when when your family has been fans and you've obviously bought into the program, given a lot of time and effort. And so I remember I was actually as Alabama's driving, I'm anticipating them making it further down the field. So I set up maybe on the 30-yard line as they're coming towards their end zone. And so I'm over on this corner. Keely runs over and intercepts the ball kind of right in front of me. And I just remember seeing him take off. I get the picture of the catch, right?
Wow.
He starts taking off down the sideline. I start booking it down the sideline, and I'm jumping up and down. Fans are yelling on, the team's yelling on one side, the fans are yelling on the other side. What am I supposed to do? Not show emotion right there? I was
Exactly.
probably fist pumping, and
Yeah.
he gets to put the Savage pads on, and honestly my favorite photo I've ever taken is him wearing the Savage pads up on the bench,
Wow.
cheering after that moment.
I don't know if I've seen that.
It's not on the
one.
wall behind us. It probably should be, but
You'll have to show it to me.
I
after
will
this.
absolutely.
That was my
Maybe
my
you can
other
include it
question.
in the video.
Put it in here.
Yeah.
That was my other question. What was your favorite photo you've taken?
That one is super special to me.
That's so awesome.
And there's a couple that come to mind, but that one is definitely just, it encapsulates kind of what it means to be a Georgia football fan, and you can just see the raw emotion and maybe the adrenaline hasn't even set
Yeah.
in for him yet, and so I think that probably takes the top spot.
That's so special, capturing history.
I know it.
What advice would you give to creatives looking for jobs?
Oh yeah, persistence is everything. Learning how to talk to different people about different things, whether that's, actually I'll start with, let's say you're a graphic designer. You don't do photography, you don't do video. I would learn at least how to talk about photography, talk about video, understand some of the basics, so that when you're in meetings and somebody's talking about a video project, you can at least be in tune with it, maybe provide some suggestions, know what color correction means, or know what the rule of thirds is, and those kinds of things. If you're a designer, you might not need to know that, but as a photographer, that's essential to us. And
For
so
sure.
being able to, maybe it's understanding lighting if you're not, if you're not a photographer, and you need to be, you need to understand those kinds of things. And then I would say, looking for jobs, it's just like anything else. Reach out to as many people as possible. Make as many connections, because you never know, especially in this industry, people are moving around so much. So you might be talking to somebody who lives on the West Coast now, and you're inspired by them, and maybe they're in a higher position than you. And then before you know it, they're working at a place on the East Coast where you want to work, and they're hiring for a job, and now you have that connection, but you're not 2,500 miles away, you're 100 miles away.
Right.
And so it just makes it easier to maybe connect and get with them. And so I think just talking to as many people as possible, learning as many viewpoints, as many little tricks of the trade, and using that to your advantage is essential.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Lastly, what is the biggest piece of advice you would tell your younger self?
Wow. That's a tough one. It's going to sound cliche, but it's all worth it at the end of the day. I used to get frustrated with maybe if something was taking me too long, or I was having to give a lot of time and effort into something, especially working in football. You're going to work long game days. You're going to work projects that maybe take you deep into the night that you maybe don't want to be at work till 10 o'clock for, but you just have to understand that at the end of the day, it is all worth it. People do appreciate the work that you're putting in, the extra effort, and just trust that especially working with a team, like people see you and they understand the value that you bring. And so I would just say to my younger self, like, create value for yourself, but also understand that people are going to see it regardless, just because of your work ethic and the passion that maybe doesn't come out through your body language or through your face, but through your work.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I feel like
Absolutely.
I learned a lot, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch this back and just hear, like, listen to all the advice again. But I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you.
Absolutely.